Hello everybody, welcome into the College of Media and Entertainment here at Middle Tennessee State University. My name's Chip Walters and glad to welcome you back into this opportunity that we have to look into the history of Blue Raider athletics and bring some great memories alive. Today we're very excited to be talking about an anniversary of the first ever Ohio Valley Conference baseball championship team from 1968. It's their 50th anniversary, and we have a large group of that 1968 team back on campus with us. And I'll kind of get started, and we'll start right here with Mr. Tony Kessinger, and just kind of real quickly tell folks your name and where you're living now.
Tony Kessinger, living in Melbourne, Florida.
All right.
I'm Don Tarter, and I live in Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
Johnny Grimes, live in Jasper, Tennessee.
Back row.
I'm Richard Howell, Columbia, Tennessee.
Gotcha.
Greg Cunningham, Ringo, Georgia.
Over on the back row.
Tom Brightwell, Dahlonega, Georgia.
And the other Tom?
Tom Eiselstein, Hickson, Tennessee.
And on the front row.
Butch Wright, Hoover, Alabama.
Good deal. And last but not least.
And Jimmy Earl from Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
All right. Well, that kind of gets us set up. We know who the players are, and we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 men out here, plus a head coach. And Coach Earl, I want to start with you because everybody knows you for what you did as head coach of the Blue Raider basketball team. And one of the great somewhat secrets is that you were also Ohio Valley Conference Coach of the Year in baseball and coached this group to a championship in 1968. Was that out of your wheelhouse, or was that something that you look forward to doing, was coaching baseball?
Well, Chip, let me tell you, that tells you, that's a good example. That tells you that players make a good coach. And I never will forget when I came over here. I came over here to help Coach Trickey as assistant basketball coach. I was head freshman basketball, and Coach Murphy called me in the office that July and pointed his finger at me and said, "Coach, you are my baseball coach." I said, "No, sir." I said, "You need to hire a baseball man that knows baseball." He said, "You are my baseball coach." I said, "Yes, sir." And that started it.
Wow.
I give all the credit to the players and to the coaches, to Coach Howell and Coach Martin and Coach Jolly and all those guys.
Wow. And that, you know, and we talk about it being 50 years ago, and I kind of want to set the stage for talking about the baseball team by talking about what life was like on campus and here in Murfreesboro in the late 1960s, because it was a volatile time in our country's history and in our state's history. And Tony, I'll just start with you. What was it like living on campus and being part of this community at that time?
Well, I came from Louisville, Kentucky, which is a pretty good-sized city. And when I got here, we had a Burger Chef and a Dairy Queen, and that was it. So it was kind of interesting to have such limited opportunities as far as eating and as far as facilities were concerned. But it was not limited when it came to friends, it came to teammates.
Yeah. Colonel Tarter, it was a time in our country's history when civil rights was going on. There was integration across public schools, college campuses, and Middle Tennessee had, Willie Brown had already been here, so things were underway. But the more I talked to people back that were here during that era, that we had it pretty lucky, that it was a pretty tight-knit community back in those days on this campus.
I know there was distractions and disturbances other places, but I never felt it here at all. I came out of Miami, Florida high school, big place, came here, and for 4 years enjoyed school, baseball, Coach Earl, weather, and Vietnam we studied in ROTC, and history you picked up conflicts because of skin color, but I don't remember ever feeling any of that pressure, any of that turmoil that was going on other places. It was uniquely pleasant.
John, was it unusual to watch television and see news reports of things that might be happening in Birmingham or wherever, and life was easy here?
Really, my wife and I saw the movie The Post, you know, and all the protests and all that going on. We didn't see it here.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew it was going on because we would see TV, but not, you know, we just didn't watch it that much. And coming from a small town, when I graduated high school in '65, then they integrated the next year. So when I got to Middle Tennessee, you know, I had friends, Willie, Ken Riley, you know, the basketball players, just great guys that we just snapped right then, you know, just took over, and they were just good guys.
Yeah, Richard, campus was not quite as crowded as it is now, was it?
Far from it. I think we had, 5,000 students in the whole school then. And I know I was 2 years behind a lot of guys because I worked 2 years after I got out of high school, construction. And you know how that is. You work part of the time and don't work.
Yeah.
So then I changed my mind and decided I wanted to go to college after all. So we came, and Coach Earl had fall baseball practice. First time we'd ever had fall baseball practice. And I went out, walked on, and he said, well, I'll give you a scholarship next year because I don't have any more scholarships. Just so happened my boy from Indiana got homesick, and he went home. So I got his scholarship after Christmas and played 4 years for him, and then he gave me a graduate assistantship to my master's degree.
Yeah. Greg, I hear stories from guys and folks who went to school here in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and they all talk about jobs they had on campus and things like that. So it was not as full-time like being a student athlete a lot of times as it is today. What were some of the jobs that you and some of your teammates might have had?
I was a mechanical engineer. So,
Hold on just a second. We have a technical issue. So,
Good.
okay.
The mic.
And he said there,
Mic up again.
I know, he must be magnetic or something.
I'll do that again.
Greg,
Well, I'll ask you.
Greg thought a mechanical engineer was the guy that pushed the lever on the train.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Chip,
Hang on just a second. I'll ask it again.
okay.
All right. Now, Greg, I hear stories of guys and ladies who went to school here in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and folks had jobs on campus that ranged all over the place. Whether you might have worked in the greenhouse or the cafeteria, things like that. What were some of the jobs that you and your teammates might have had back in the late 60s?
One of them was making sure we got all the rocks off the infield.
Coach Earl had plenty of jobs for you.
He did. You know, this was a great place back in those days. And I know one summer I stayed up here and worked in a hardware store. But I think probably for me, I always thought that eventually I was going to make Murfreesboro my home. It didn't work out that well for me to do that, but coming back up here today to see this place and the opportunities that are here for students that weren't there when we were here.
And you and your wife burn up I-24 plenty, so
Yeah.
that's still to be said because you do darken the door of campus a good bit. Now Tommy, I mean, here we are in this wonderful studio in a building that was not even thought about when you guys were on campus. Tell me where your classes were back in those days.
Well, I remember Dr. McCash's history class, and the building's no longer here. I remember the biology building. I remember the old administration building. I took English. I flunked that, but took it over and passed it. But it was pretty stretched out. I remember Forest Hall, where we took ROTC, learned how to clean an M1 rifle, which came in handy, because that's what you trained in on with the Army Reserves at that time. We had HPER with Dr. Fran Reel and Ms. Beulah Davis, and Bob LaLance. I can still remember quite a few of them, the teachers at the old gym where we took phys ed classes.
Yep. When you start naming off names, I see a lot of heads nodding and things like that. Tom Eiselstein, tell us your story on how you got here.
After I graduated high school, I was planning on going somewhere else and didn't have the money to go there, so I decided this was the only other place I had applied to that I got in. So I came up here and walked on with the baseball team. My freshman year and got cut. Then walked on again in the spring and made the team. I lived off campus. I got into college, got into school too late to live on campus. I lived right across the street from the president's house, over a garage with 3 other guys, and enrolled in classes late. And I remember sitting in the cafeteria the week after I started classes and talking to some upperclassmen that I knew. And it seemed like every time I told them who I had for a class, that was the worst teacher to have. So I was pretty worried about that, but I had a real good high school background, and that got me through that first semester until I could figure out who to get the second semester. But that and my love for baseball and finally making the team and being able to play baseball, I think got me through school easier. I was going to make it through school no matter what. My mother made sure of that, but it did make it easier for me, and the friendships that I developed through baseball have stayed with me throughout my life.
All right, they got to do one more little. They got to change coach's mic one more time. You're coach.
Can you use it kind of like a suppository? Get Coach Earl hooked up.
Oh, me.
What am I doing here?
No, I had issues with these earlier, and I don't know where the good mic was sitting over here, and we moved it.
That's your magnetic personality.
It's like that window you told me in Montgomery just shut. You remember that? The van? When I was a freshman, I shut the van. It didn't work right. The window broke.
Yeah.
Is anybody
Yeah, I remember
I
that.
remember that.
I broke the
supposed to shut
window
that
of the
way.
van, shut it, and it just
Shattered off.
so it didn't work out right.
Boy, broke the window of the van, and Coach Earl ran the brakes out on the way down, and Paul Smith ran off with the other car with all the he ended up at Oglethorpe and had nothing to play with.
You were talking about
No basketball.
suppositories. I had this
It wasn't my
friend told me
fault.
one
Wasn't my
time,
fault, Coach.
a good
I told you I
friend of
was
theirs
catcher's equipment. That's
got
what.
hooked on some over-the-counter drugs. And I said, I can remember a good friend of mine got hooked on suppositories.
Go greasy.
What?
Oh,
Lord help.
I thought he was changing the thing.
He did change it.
Chip,
Just come back out.
have you ever had one of these that were X-rated?
Well,
Have you ever had a tape like this that was X-rated?
We're not live, so we can.
Well, it's about to get that way.
Yeah, but maybe.
With him sitting on the back row, it's going to be X-rated.
going on.
Can you talk some, Coach?
Say a few words. Test that mic again.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'm hearing something crackle over speakers back here. Hear that? So,
That's him scratching it.
yep.
Again?
No, hang on.
Okay.
When you got 12 of us or 11 of us, to get all of them right at the same time is
Yeah, I
can
can.
be a little bit of a challenge.
You guys doing great. Yeah. I just pitched the idea of just handing a mic to each and every one of you. And
That would keep them from talking over each other.
These guys don't know about the last person that's got to talk here.
And that's because I'm fixing to come to you.
Oh boy.
I remember that trip
You're good?
after we ended up down there at
Are we good?
Huntington.
I think so.
We
Okay.
put about 8 of us into one car coming home.
Here we go.
Like a movie or something.
I remember the movie. Remember, Blowout, wasn't it?
I don't remember what the movie was, but I remember we had about 8 of us in the car.
Okay, quiet. We'll get ready. I'm about to restart. Okay. All right. Butch, we've talked to all the players but you, and we've heard about what life was like in town and on campus. And I do want to get into what the ballpark was like here shortly, but you didn't play all your games at home. You guys had to go on the road, and I'm sure there were not super nice buses and charter planes and things like that. What was travel like for this baseball team in 1968?
It was a little different sometimes. We were in vans, and but we had it was a great group of guys. I mean, everyone got along well. Of course, we'd go to the games in Western Kentucky and Austin Peay and Tennessee Tech. And we'd all look forward to going to the games. So it didn't matter how we went. We always wanted to get there and win. And but it was a great group of guys, and going to vans. It was a lot of fun, a lot of humor. And we always got relaxed, I think, before we got to the game because of the people that are here.
Greg, I'm sure the vans never had a breakdown, did they?
No, they sure didn't. Oh, one time in Murray, Kentucky, one went south.
Flat tire.
What happened? Anybody jump in that's got details on this.
I'll tell you what happened. It was terrible. Coach Earl used to make me ride with him every time that we would go somewhere. And I had made a bet with him. If I could hold him to 3 or less hits, 1 or less runs, I didn't have to ride back with him. And he agreed to that. He agreed to it earlier when Brightwell messed it up. But anyway, we got to the bridge there, and they had been
Coming over the lake?
Yes.
Okay, the one that they just imploded the other day.
Yeah. Well,
Right
it
there
should
at
have
Lake
been
Barkley,
imploded
okay.
back then. But what happened was that there had been a wreck, and so I thought, well, I would help out. So I got out, put all the catcher's equipment on, the mask and 2 bats, and I had things going pretty good until this one guy didn't pay attention and he ran into another guy. So we thought we better leave pretty quickly, and we did, not realizing that on the side of the car it said MTSU Athletic Department. And I was admonished for some of that, but I got through it by my coach.
Coach, you have a retort on that.
It was an adventure. Every day was an adventure with these guys.
I heard something before we started taping about windows falling out or something like that. What was all that about? Who's got that story? Out of a van.
That was Butch's.
Story.
Falling out?
Well,
Slam the door.
Slamming the door. Yeah, we were in Montgomery. And here I am, a freshman, and the equipment was back there in the back of the van. And I believe that's what helped out the window when I shut it. The back window just, came apart. It broke. And Coach Earl came out and was very, he wasn't pleased with me shutting the door.
verbose.
And so, yeah, I broke the window.
All right, whoever wants to take this. I came on campus in the fall of '81 I was a Smith Hall guy. Where did y'all live? What were the dorms, and where was the cafeteria at the time?
I'll take the dorms.
Okay,
Beasley Hall.
you're a Beasley boy.
Yes, when I walked into my room at Beasley Hall, there were two beds hooked to the wall with metal spring mattresses. There was a desk up front, and there was a small closet on the side. And it was very Spartan. And it was easy to move the stuff. So one day, Donnie Tartar comes, and it's the last day of school before the semester ended. And Brady Straub was getting ready to go home, but he wasn't there in the room. And so Donnie comes in and says, let's move Brady's stuff into the shower. So we took his mattress, we took his
So far, I don't
drawers.
see anything wrong with this story, by the way.
took the drawers, and we set up his room in the shower. And Brady comes in, and we're sitting on the other bed. And he's wanting to know what's going on. So we took him over there, and that's when someone, I won't mention who it was, turned the water on and just doused everything he had.
The only person you've ever mentioned inside this story was Don Tarter.
There were other people there.
Okay, there were other people there who will remain nameless at this
That's
point.
right.
Okay.
And maybe the story illustrates the fact that there was camaraderie, there was humor, there was closeness, and the Spartanness of the dorm was not something I noticed in real time. I had a place to sleep. I walked down the hall. My daughter had a phone card. We had quarters and a phone that you put them in. One phone on the floor.
Right.
And I was in Sims Hall, which was exactly as described by Tony. But I didn't have any complaint about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and we walked all the way across campus to the cafeteria, and yet I'll tell you, I remember the food seemingly was just what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I know it's fun, and we make fun of looking back, but man, I'll tell you, in real time, it was a great way to live.
I tell you, I agree with you because I mean, like I said, I was a Smith Hall guy, and to be honest, I don't think you've actually gone to college until you've lived in a dorm with
Yeah.
inside hallways and community bathrooms.
Yep.
So,
Let me jump in on that though. Here I was, a freshman coming from Alabama, not knowing anyone, and I got into the dorm, and there were people from all sports, all places, all over the world there. And it was great being there. But we had the dorm director, Coach Terry Sweeney.
Oh, yeah.
And this was when I first got there. So we had football players there, and someone, I remember his name, but he broke a door down. And Coach Sweeney called in for a meeting of everybody in the dorm. I don't know if anybody remembers this. Everybody come in there. And Coach Sweeney, in a nice way, which was pretty loud, said he's going to find out who did this, and he's going to do something about it. But here I am, my eyes got big, and I'm ready to go back to Alabama because I'm afraid I'm going to be accused of it, which I wasn't. But it was a lot of fun, but like Don said, the places to eat were very good where we went. But living in the dorm there at Beasley was an experience.
yep, you had everything you wanted. Now, Coach, you had this collection of players plus some who are not here, not with us. What were your expectations, or were you just hoping to get to the next day with this group?
We knew we had a good ball club, but I'll tell this story. And I knew we had a good pitching staff. We needed a catcher. And I called several scouts.
Ones that closes the door and breaks the window, was that the kind you were looking for, Coach?
And this one scout said, there's a boy down in Alabama. He's got the worst hitch I have ever seen in his swing. I said, I don't care if he can hit or not. I want a catcher who can throw, who has a good arm and can work the pitchers. He said, he can do that. So we got Butch. And that was the last piece of the puzzle. Let me also add this. I've coached a lot of teams. I've been around a lot of athletes. I've never been around a group of people I enjoyed any more than this group here.
Including your basketball teams.
Including the basketball teams. They were mischievous. It was a zoo.
But they had each other's back, didn't they?
That's right, and when they played to win. They worked hard. When they crossed between the lines, they played. They played to win.
That's what I was telling somebody the other day, Chip. I coached high school sports for 27 years, and I would love to have coached a bunch with this talent on the field. But off the field, I have more respect for Coach Earl, always respected, but more so after those.
Now, did any of you have any thought about Coach Earl that, hey, here's a guy he was a basketball coach?
I played my freshman year before Coach arrived, and most all of us that were playing college baseball played Little League baseball, and we played high school baseball. And there are some things you learned early. One of the things you learned early was the shortstop gets the ball, calls the fly balls in the infield. The other thing you learned is that the center fielder calls, and you had that down about age 12.
Yeah.
First practice Coach Earl calls. You can tell he's been reading a book, because he tells us the shortstop's going to call the infield fly and the center fielder is going to call the outfield fly. And I thought it's going to be a long year.
Let me tell you something.
And
I'm sorry.
it turned out it wasn't his baseball knowledge that mattered. It was how he treated people and made you feel like you belonged.
Amen.
And he took care of you when you did right, and he handled you when you did wrong, and you knew you had it coming. I've never been around anybody that had the insight of knowing how hard to slam the door, when to pat you on the back, and it always worked. And we worked out who was going to catch the infield flies. That wasn't a problem.
Tom,
I was just going to echo some of what Donnie said. I mean, Coach Earl coached the baseball team for 3 years, and he won one conference championship, went to the NCAA region. I mean, after 3 years, after never really coaching it and maybe reading a book. And as Donnie said, he knew when to let you alone, and he knew when to correct you, and he knew what exactly to say to get you to perform. And it didn't take much with a bunch of talent that we had, but he could push your button, but he could sure enough motivate you.
I'd like to add to that too, if you don't mind. I spent 43 years in public education, 34 of them as an administrator, and coached for about 20 years as well. And I tried to model my administrating and coaching after Coach Earl, the handling of people. Mm-hmm. Not so much the knowledge of the game, as Donnie said. I knew that. I learned that from my grandfather. But how to deal with the different personalities and the different people that we had on this team, and only some of them were mischievous. there were others who actually went to class and studied and made their grades. But
I go along with everything he said. Yeah. I coached for 43 years too. So.
Yep. Coach, I mean, to tie the past with today, just a few weeks ago as we taped this, Nick McDevitt was named our new head basketball coach, and he said his first meeting with the players, he said, "I'm not here to treat you the same. I'm here to treat you fairly." And I would say that's a pretty, from what I've heard, not everybody was the same. Not everybody reacts to the stick. Some react to the carrot.
This group did things, but never did anything bad.
Yeah.
It was mischievous. And many of them I had to discipline, and then when I disciplined them, I'd go and tell my wife and start laughing. It was a zoo, but it was a good zoo.
Some of us didn't think it was too funny the way you did it.
I think what he did extremely well was take athletes that came out of high school. In most cases, they were a pretty good big shot in that high school. And now you're coming to college where everybody knows how to hold the bat and slide into second base. And he's not here to defend himself, but that won't keep me from telling this story. We had a left-hander kid came down from Maryland who was a very, very confident left-handed baseball. In fact, Coach called him left-hander. And I don't think he'd probably ever been taken out of a ball game. And early on in his career, he was getting shelled pretty good. And Coach did what you do. You change pitchers. And I don't think he'd ever had that happen to him. So on the way to the dugout, Chuck Machado launches his glove all the way through the air, and it crashes into before the glove hit the dugout, Coach Earl had him running laps in the outfield during the game. Of course, we didn't have an outfield. It didn't matter. He just put him out there. And it gets worse. The game's over, and we all go in the locker room. Coach forget he's got Chuck running out there. And Chuck Machado's the kind of guy that would have run till the next morning until somebody goes gets him. Coach says, left. Where's the left-hander? Where's the left-hander? We said, Coach, he's out there running. He said, go get the boy, bring him in.
Well, obviously he turned out okay, and this team, one of the real strengths that it had was its pitching staff.
Amen.
And who wants to talk about the depth that this pitching staff had and how important that was? Because, I mean, if you don't give up any, you don't have to score a whole lot.
I'll tell you one about a guy, and he's passed on. It was John Finney. Yeah. He was from Swanee, and he was the Bear. And John was a relief pitcher, except if we played Swanee. John always started against Swanee. And talk about somebody who was driven, but had a sense of humor, but driven. John would pitch his heart out every time, but it was special for him against Swanee. I'll never forget that.
Coach?
I'm glad that Tom said something about John Finney. Let me tell you about John Finney. John Finney would have been a starter at any other school in the OVC. But he happened to come here when we had a deep pitching staff. But he came every day, and he worked hard, and he was a team player, and he cheered for all his teammates, and he was good. He was the heart of this team. And I can't say enough about John Finney.
You know, I'm not sure, you know, if we think about it, you look, I mean, after your days when John Stanford came in and Coach Pete and now Coach McGuire, this team had 2 pitchers that are in the Blue Raider Hall of Fame. Greg Cunningham is one of those.
Let me say this also, Chip. There's a person here tonight who started 4 years at this school, second base. The best second baseman in the league as far as I'm concerned. And he's on the list for the Hall of Fame, and he should be in the Hall of Fame, Donnie Tartar.
Yeah, and
Amen.
so that, it's. I mean, this team had all the pieces. We had the deep pitching staff. Kind of let people know who were the stars on the offensive side. Who carried the big stick? Anybody want to?
Everybody.
Everybody could hit.
We didn't
Was there a
have
fight at the bat rack all the time?
No, well, nobody was a superstar hitter. We were all hitting fairly well, upper 270s, low 300s, but we didn't have any, on our team, we didn't have anybody hitting 400, 450. We didn't have that. But we were driven to play small ball, I guess is the best way to put it. And we did it. And besides which, we didn't have a fence. So, I mean, if you did go deep, you had to leg it out. I think I led the league in triples because I couldn't do an inside the park home run.
Couldn't run that far.
Yeah, I couldn't run that far or that fast. But it was a good, solid baseball team. You had Donnie batting first. I think Brady hit second. Third, I'm not sure. Maybe Butch Green. We had a couple of guys come in. Charlie Daniels.
Jackie Carver.
Jackie Carver.
Dixon County Charlie Daniels.
Yeah. He's I think he's going to be here tonight.
Switch hitter.
Yeah, I mean we had a good solid hitting crew to go along with a great pitching crew. Yeah.
When, I mean, obviously way schedules are set up, you play some non-conference games first before you get in the league. When did you guys have a thought in that first, 3-4 weeks of the season that this was something special?
We were undefeated.
I think
we were 10-0, weren't we?
At one time, we started out with a nice winning streak. Can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I thought it was 10-0.
This was an awful good ball team.
The infield was really good with Donnie and Brady at shortstop and Johnny Price at third and
Tommy at first.
Tommy at first, yeah. So
I tell you, Chip, one of the things that was really nice was we didn't have fences. So when I pitched,
You couldn't give up any gopher balls.
we put the outfielders back about 400, just hope they could get into the ones in front of them.
Now, Chip, you can give up a gopher ball because against Murray County one day, Murray State, Greg was pitching, and it went 12 innings,
Yeah.
and he'd given up 2, maybe 3 hits, and we had the bases loaded, nobody out, couldn't score. Second, third, 1 out, couldn't score. So finally, in the top of the 12th, this guy hits one that would probably, it would hit midway in the track stadium now. Which one of y'all, was it you, Tommy, in right field? Run it down?
Center field.
Yeah,
Center
Butch
field.
Green was probably.
Butch Green.
Jason Dallas
By the
was
time he
right.
got to the ball, the guy had scored. Well, we get back to the dorm, and the radio, this guy's talking, telling about the game that Greg Cunningham pitched a 3-hitter, did a so-and-so, struck out 12. Tremendous home run given up in the top of the 12th. Radio, out of the 3rd floor of Beasley Hall. So you can give up gopher balls at state.
Another thing, talking about the field and all, when we were playing for the championship in the OVC against Moorhead, and it rained, and it rained and rained and rained, and we had to get the field ready to play. So we got out there and started pouring gas on it, burning it, brought a helicopter in, put it on and played too.
Yeah, Coach.
At that time, you talk about working on the field, the entire coaching staff,
Yeah.
football, everybody chipped in and helped.
Because you're hosting.
On the field.
This was hosting the tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We beat Moorhead that day.
I think we dug a big hole behind the backstop.
Yeah.
Pushed all the water in. As a matter of fact, filled it up with water about 8 feet deep.
They dug those dugouts that time. They didn't
Coach
drain.
Earl got tackled in that too, didn't he? Faking that water.
But you have to pump the dugouts out.
Yeah, man.
You know, that wasn't it the best 2 out of 3?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know
that's
we
what-
won the first game. The second game, didn't we?
We got no
We
hit.
got no hit.
Yeah.
They won. Yeah.
They won. But then wasn't that when the rain came? Wasn't there
Yeah,
a lag?
that's what it was. His
And
last
that time we got out there, and I don't know who started the mud fight, but tackling people in the mud, and I mean, you know, everybody was tense, and
That
we-
kind of
that
let the
loosened us
pressure
up.
off.
And especially and Coach Martin, but he lost his glasses
Yeah.
in the mud. And
Yeah, who else
luckily
was on the staff? Who did you have? Who helping
Jack
you?
Martin.
Okay.
He was at UT working on his degree, and I called him and asked him to come up and help coach the baseball, and he did.
Yeah.
And Richard was
Great
on the
guy.
team. He was a graduate assistant,
Yep.
great guy.
and they did the coaching.
Yeah.
That final game, let me tell you about the final game against Moorhead. I remember it like yesterday. Chuck Machado started the game and pitched good for about 5 innings. The 6th inning, he loaded the bases with nobody out. Nobody out. I brought Greg Cunningham in. The first batter, he hit into a double play. Donnie and Brady Straub got a double play. They scored 1 run from third base and tied it up 2-2. The next inning, we loaded the bases, and Donnie Tarter got the hit that drove in 2 runs. And with Greg Cunningham on the mound, that was all we needed.
And that ended up winning the Ohio Valley Conference Championship. But I know you played Moorhead in the finals. Who else in the league was really good at that time? Anything y'all remember about any of those?
Murray was
Murray was really
good.
always good.
Murray was always good.
I always heard that Murray was a feeder college for the Yankees.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember it was a guy named Big Wally who used to come out of the locker room, and he had the bat. He had this big old wooden bat, and it was stuck in the back pocket of his pants. He was a huge, muscular guy, and he would take batting practice. And their team, they looked professional. They had a great field too. You know, they had fences and everything.
Great.
Chip, we've talked about the fences. I want to tell y'all an experience I had up here a few years ago. We had an opportunity to go through and see the facilities that these kids enjoy today, and I think I was looking in the lockers, and there's 6 or 7 sets of uniforms. So one of these guys asked me. He said, "What was the difference back when y'all played than today?" And I said, "Well, there's quite a bit of difference. First of all, we didn't have fences. We only had about 3 bats. And we only had 1 set of uniforms.
And they were wool.
They were
And
wool
so
flannel.
what would happen, we only had 9 uniforms.
Yeah.
So when we had to make a substitution, we had to call timeout, and somebody had to go and take that uniform off so that somebody else could come in and play.
I don't think that's true. Is that really? Is that?
You're right. It's embellished a little bit, isn't it?
Hey, it was close.
The dressing room,
Yeah.
Coach Earl got us a dressing room underneath the stands.
It was underneath.
football.
Was it underneath the football stadium?
Yeah.
Yeah. That one used to be underneath Well, it was the press box. It became the president's box later.
Our dressing room could have fit in 3 of the cubicles of the new dressing room.
Yeah.
And the TV we had wasn't even color in that dressing room. We didn't
That's
We
another
had
thing.
a TV in
The
there.
guy believed me.
He did.
Yeah, he said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "No, I'm not. I wouldn't kid about that." So anyway, it was.
You know, that dressing room,
He didn't know you
it was
did.
funny. That year that we won, about middle way through the year, we came out, of course, everybody left their glove and their cleats and everything else in the locker room, and here we go in there to change to practice. Cleats are gone, all of our gloves are gone. Somebody broke in, stole everything, and so we're left. I had an old junior high school first baseman's mitt, and I had to use it. And and everybody might have got a new glove. About 2 weeks later, it happened again. I mean, we lost everything twice.
Twice?
Twice.
Wow. Now, Coach Earl, how tall are you?
About 6'3", 6'3" and a
How
half.
tall were the ceilings in the dugout?
One, he weren't very high.
Yeah, they got a dent
Slow
in 'em.
pitch down the middle, right there. Slow pitch down the middle.
Hey, how about it? Yeah, I got excited. I almost got knocked out.
By your own doing.
Let me tell you a story.
Okay.
Dr. Quill Cope was the president at that time. He came to all the baseball games. He loved this baseball team. I wanted to sod the infield. So I went to him. And Dr. Earl New over in the ag department was an agronomist. Well, Dr. Cope was an agronomist too. So we went over there and had Dr. Earl New start, said we'll cross-pollinate with Z84, and he starts all this stuff about what they're going to do. And Dr. Cope looks at him and he says, first, he said, let me tell you, and he says, that experimental grass field down there is not worth a darn. And I'm trying to clean this up. And he looks over at me and he says, Jimmy, we're not going to sod your infield. I said, yes, sir, that's fine, Dr. Cope. I go outside, that's on a Friday. I go outside, I apologize to Dr. New for bringing him over there. That Monday, Dr. Cope sent a $1,000 check over to Coach Murphy. Said, buy Jimmy a scoreboard. He needs it a lot worse than he needs his infield sodded. That's the type of man he was.
Yeah.
He loved this baseball team.
And when you talk about $1,000 in 1968.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
It is. You guys win the OVC championship, and did any of you have any idea that it was the first OVC baseball championship in school history?
No.
And Don, I see you shaking your head. Did you have any idea there was even a tournament to win?
Well said. No, sir. I mean, I was a senior, and so I was, I thought we were done. Invited my mom and dad to come up and watch graduation, and they come up, and I find out gratefully, we're not going to walk down to graduation. We're heading to Jackson, Tennessee, to play in the NCAAs. I didn't even know baseball did that, and so it was exciting. It was a first time, and it was a blessing because we didn't see it coming. And it's a permanent memory that we got to do the things that Coach Earl has described. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, because I came to school here 4 years and I went to almost every class, and I'm sure I learned something. I just don't happen to remember what it was. But what I do remember is the baseball team and Coach Earl and the camaraderie and the goodness that comes with a bunch of guys pulling hard in the same direction and something good happening. That served me well.
For a lot of years.
In a lot of circumstances.
Might have still been playing at Jackson if they hadn't had the craziest ground rule. They had a wire across some field, and that was in play.
Oh, wow.
And
Now,
they beat us
where did y'all play in Jackson?
right at Union
Oh,
University.
Union. And so, yes, Coach.
Chip, we came in the NCAA tournament. We came out of the losers bracket undefeated. We beat everybody in the losers bracket. We had to win 2 games in the finals. And it was Division II at that time.
Right.
And we won the first one, 1-0. Greg
All right, well, back. Let's go back. First game in the who was your opening game against? Because you lost, it put you in the
Wittenberg,
losers
wasn't it?
bracket.
Wittenberg.
Wittenberg. And then we beat Illinois State
Right.
in the
It was
losers
Delta
bracket.
State.
Okay.
Played Delta State.
And they went further. Even though it was Division II at the time, we went further than any baseball team in the history of this school.
Yep.
Went to the finals.
Good.
Won the first game 1-0. Lost the second game by 2 runs. They had a great year.
So I mean, when you got to the last and coming out of the loser, you had to win 2. You forced a second championship game.
Yep, that's right.
Against
We got
Delta
beat in the
State. Is that what I
finals.
heard?
Delta State, yeah.
So I mean, Clarksdale, Mississippi is about as far from Jackson as Murfreesboro is. So I would imagine that was a pretty even match as far as fans and everything else. What, Greg?
I think Delta State went on and won the national tournament that
They
year,
did.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were a better ball team.
Oh, yeah, by far, no doubt.
The And you had a unique, because you were a grad assistant at the time, correct?
In '68.
In '68, what was it like for you to have seen after playing and seeing these guys and then having to coach guys that you had played as teammates with?
I think that it couldn't have happened to a better bunch of guys, really. I mean, I thought the world of them, just like I did Coach Earl. And I thought it was a great opportunity for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. As we kind of get close to the end here, I want to make sure, have we missed any story that needs to be told? Or I mean, this is on tape, so it can be whatever, and it can end up in the annals of time. But Don,
and it's not a story. It's a regurgitation of facts that needs to be said. We not only, our best pitcher was the best pitcher in the league.
Yep.
Greg Cunningham threw the ball in a strange way, and he threw it consistently well. He was 11-1, and he was the OVC Player of the Year. And right behind him, we come with Billy Walker, who was maybe as good an athlete as this school has seen.
Yep.
And
he's in the Hall of Fame already for both football and basketball.
Exactly. And so it needs to be said that what mattered about that team was who coached it and the pitching staff. Now, the rest of us had bit parts to play,
Yep.
and I think we did that part well. But pitching wins baseball games. And
he had a 1.55 career ERA.
He was Mr. Baseball that year, and it mattered.
Yep.
And I can still see him throwing that ball underhand, and it's a strange memory, but it was incredibly successful.
Nobody could hit him.
Yeah.
Nobody could hit Greg.
Except that guy from Murray.
Well, every now and then.
I want to give everybody one more chance here to kind of to give me a thought that's a takeaway of what this place at that time has done for you, and your thoughts on how you feel about it today, and what's it like when you come back here and still get welcome back, because it's still home. And Tony, you're so good with words, and I hear from you from all over the world. You go on mission trips. I get emails from Ghana and West Africa. I don't know whether you're over there recruiting for Dean Hayes or bringing folks to the Lord. I'm not sure sometimes, but talk a little bit about what the connection and how you've remained connected and what it means to be part of this 50 years later.
Yeah, what really strikes me is this. When I came to Middle Tennessee, I came as a baseball player. But I played basketball in high school, and Coach Earl said, you're going to play on the freshman basketball team. So I have the distinction and the privilege of being the only player that Coach Earl has coached both in baseball and basketball. And so I got to know this man pretty well.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that has held everything together with this team, and it's been Coach Earl and his love for the team, his appreciation for the various talents, and his ability to teach us what it was like to be the type of person we needed to become.
Yeah. Don?
I want to mention Brady Straub. Brady Straub was our shortstop. He was my roommate. Brady Straub was an excellent ball player and an even better person. He graduated, of course, and went on to be a successful high school football coach. He contracted cancer very early in his life, and God sometimes takes the good people home early, and Brady Straub was one of the good people, and he's in heaven, and I'd like to say hello to Brady Straub.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
Amen.
My story was like Tommy. My freshman year, I got cut, and I was persistent. I didn't leave the team. I stayed around in the way, and then sophomore year, Coach Earl come up and he told me they had a scholarship, and oh boy, I was pumped, but it was to be a student manager. So I had to make a decision if I wanted to play and probably get cut again, or be a student manager with a scholarship. So it was a no-brainer. And to this day, I told him a while ago how it felt, him taking care of me, and I'll never forget it.
Richard, what did you take from here?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Another story I just happened to think of a while ago. We went to Western Kentucky to play, and they had this dressing room up there. And it was that's where we dressed. We was going to be locked up, they said, everything. And back then, we wore ties and sport coats and everything. And got in there and we went and played the game. I think we won too. They cleaned us out. They stole everything we had. We had to wear our uniforms back home.
There was a lot of crime going on back in those days.
But that was,
People were
but
poor.
what I said is true. He's one of the biggest influence on my life of anybody.
Greg, you probably are, outside of Coach Earl, you're probably on, and Tony stays connected. You're here a lot, and you come up a lot. And what is it that makes this place feel like home to you?
Chip, it's hard to say what it is, but I want to go back and take another approach to what you were saying. I had an opportunity to come up here and play ball with some of the greatest people I've ever met. And this guy over here, Lord knows what I put him through. And he don't realize what he put me through. But I will tell you, I've never respected anybody any more than I have Coach Earl, and I love him. And this is a great group of people, and we're lucky to have experienced it together. And one other thing, not only did he let us play ball, we also played, we had an intramural team that he let us have called the Wheel Knots. And that bonded us even closer.
Well said.
And so, again, I want to thank everybody in this room for the opportunity to share some of my life with y'all and still sharing it.
Coach, you had something to add there?
That I had forgot about the wheel
Did you
knots.
coach the Wheel Knots too?
No. But there was an unwritten rule that no athlete on athletic scholarship could play intramural football. When we went to Coach Murphy and got his blessing, we felt like it would help them come together and bond. And not only, they won the intramural championship, they went to Tech and beat Tech's intramural championship on their home field.
Says something about them. Who
That's the Wheel Knots. We had some pretty good athletes at that time.
Sandlin was quarterback.
Tommy Brightwell, final thought, takeaway from being able to get back. It's hard to believe that this was 50 years ago.
Amen.
It definitely is. There's a whole lot that has changed at the school. A lot of us don't have as much hair, don't have as much get up and go as we used to have. But when you come back here, there's still remnants of what we had back then. We can see it today in the students. We can see it in the buildings and the growth. It's a great place, and I'm proud to have graduated from here. And I hope that we can leave this gathering here with, and maybe some of these younger people can understand what it was like dealing with what we had to deal with back 50 years ago. But I don't think any of them have the luck that we did for having a leader like Coach Earl and Ronnie Tarter.
Understand that in the baseball facility, we were here in 13 at the 45 reunion, and we were looking at the pictures, and one of the players then come up and said, "Look, that picture's in black and white." So
that's all you do.
That's our picture.
So y'all stand out.
So what TV is?
Right. Tommy Eiselstein, this place was a teacher's college. That's the way it started. Over 100 years ago, and you spent a lifetime in administration and education. But that education, I mean, y'all really got one here on campus, didn't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's and that's one of the great things that I have always liked about this university. And I'll go a little step further. I did want to mention, talking about facilities. I remember when I came back in the spring and made the team my freshman year, it was over on the football field. It's where we practiced. We didn't even have a baseball field to practice on at the time. They were still trying to do something to the one we ended up with. But getting back to the education, it's the professors knew us as individuals. Could see us on campus and call our first names. Many of them came to baseball games a lot. I came back 3 years later to start on my master's degree, and went to see Dr. Judy Smith, who was the Dean of Women at the time, had been my advisor in college, and she set me up to become a dorm director and get my graduate degree in 1 year instead of 4 or 5 years. I had two of my 3 children graduated from here. My wife did. Actually, I have 12 family members that are MTSU graduates, but my 2 children came back up here to go to school several years ago, and the education they were getting and the association with their professors was just what I'd had. Even though the university had probably tripled in size by the time, it still has had, and I'm sure still has, that small college feel that people got to know people as a person, not just you're another number in my class or whatever the case. And they knew what we did.
And and it is like, I mean, it's a different world, and technology has done so much different. But Butch, you're the last player here. You got something profound to kind of give us of what it was like, and now here we are, transported in time 50 years later.
For me, coming from Anniston, Alabama, I wasn't the smartest student. Coach Earl came and offered me a scholarship to Middle Tennessee, and he gave me an opportunity to get that education. So I came up here, quote, not really wanting to get an education, but play professional baseball after college and after a few years. I found out that's not the way it runs in life. And Middle Tennessee gave me a chance to get my education, get my degree, with Coach Earl's help. And thank you, Coach Earl. After a few years, he and I talked, and he gave me a chance to keep getting that education. And I understood that's what I need to do. So I graduated, ended up getting my master's degree at another university. And I think it had a lot to do, I know it had a lot to do with Coach Earl. So God bless Coach Earl for everything he gave me and everyone else here and the university. Thank the university for giving us a chance to get that education here at a wonderful university.
Well,
people in Alabama know who Middle Tennessee is.
Yeah.
You living in Birmingham, they know who Middle Tennessee is.
Well, you were important. You came as a catcher. He needed a catcher. And later on, Steve Peterson, when he would get on the bus to go somewhere, only thing he would ask, he didn't ask if his starting pitcher was on the bus. Is there a catcher? Okay, we're good. Let's go. And Coach Earl, to sit in your seat today, and again, like we started this, we talked about how your career was known for great basketball teams, filling up Murphy Center. It has to be unbelievably gratifying to sit here with these guys 50 years later, talking about the accomplishments on the field, but more importantly, where they've gone in life, and they attribute a lot of that back to you.
Well, that's very nice of them. I can't take a lot of credit for it. They were good people. They love life. They did things mischievous, but this doesn't surprise me a bit how they've turned out. They're good people, and it was an honor to be around them. And as I told you earlier, of all the teams I've coached, basketball, whatever, I've enjoyed being around this bunch more than I have anybody.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, it's been an honor to spend some time with you guys here today, because I'm one of those guys, I love to soak in a lot of the old stories, and I'm probably sure we're going to hear some even better ones once we quit taping here. But thanks so much for coming back to campus, and thank you all for being and continuing to be True Blue. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps it up for what we have today as we look back 50 years in Blue Raider baseball, back to the 1968 Ohio Valley Conference champions. I'm Chip Walters. Thanks for joining us. That's it.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you, Chip. Appreciate it.
How do we get this off?